Hey everyone, it's Sam, and welcome back to the 911 Nonsense podcast. To stay in the loop, learn about upcoming guests, and join in the conversations with the Noon community, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And hey, if you like what you hear in this episode, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Your support means the world to us. On this episode of Noon, I sit down with James Boomer Boomhauer, flight paramedic, mental health professional, and founder of Stay Fit for Duty. James has spent more than 20 years in EMS, but this conversation goes far beyond medicine. We talk about the reality of trauma, why so many providers avoid therapy, what good mental health care actually looks like, and why finding the right therapist matters just as much as deciding to go. Let's get started. All right, James, thank you so much for joining us on the Noon podcast today. It's so great to see you and have you on. I'd love to hear an introduction of who you are and what you do.
Sam, thank you so much. My name is James Boomhauer. People call me Boomer. I am a flight paramedic out in Boston, Massachusetts. I am also a pre-licensed mental health professional, and I see clients throughout Massachusetts and Rhode Island. I am the owner of a platform called Stay Fit for Duty that specializes in psychoeducation, first responder health and wellness, along with really making the idea of seeking mental health care or asking questions about mental health care much more normal and much more natural, because you're not asking a psychotherapist who doesn't know the difference between an EMT and a nurse. You're asking a mental health professional who also does the job with you every single day.
That's fantastic, man. Thank you so much for doing that. It's becoming more recognized that we as providers need trauma therapists who are competent in the things that we do and the things that we know. So that makes it super helpful when we have one of our own going above and beyond to do that for your fellow workers that are in your area. So thank you so much for supporting your community in that way.
Thank you. It's an honor. I appreciate that.
So how much crap do you get for your last name?
A lot. Now, it's either crap or respect, right? I think it really depends on whether or not you're a King of the Hill fan. I will say a very good friend of mine is very fluent in German and informed me that Boomhauer must roughly translate to lumberjack because it's tree cutter. And it's just funny how some people are like, oh, dang old Boomhauer, and this person's like Boomhauer, like big, strong, massive, yeah. And I just love the dichotomy between the two, but endless shit for my last name. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's awesome. What a cool origin too. That's really neat.
I just think it's amazing that I had no idea until a really good friend of mine at a bar was like, do you know what your last name means? And I'm like, just typical dumb American, nope, and she's like, you mean lumberjack, that's tree cutter, big, massive, yeah. So I love it.
That's awesome, dude. So what got you into doing, you said it was a pre-license for mental health. What really prompted you to get into that?
Absolutely. So I'll start by kind of walking through all the pieces. So in most states at the master's level, at the graduate level, you can either be a licensed professional counselor or licensed mental health counselor or a social worker or some derivation of social work. But when you finish grad school and you either complete your boards or set up to take your boards, nearly every state in the country has thousands of hours of what are known as pre-licensed hours that you have to complete, which are hours under supervision. So my formal title, if you want to look up my NPI or look up my state boards, I, in my chunk of New England, am an LMHC-A, which stands for associate, which just means pre-licensed. I was really hoping by the time this aired, that would be done. It's unfortunately, boards move slow, so it'll be a couple more months than that, but I'm rounding third. So I have thousands of hours of not only EMDR focused care, but trauma focused care under my belt, and really, really close to just proudly saying I'm not pre-licensed anymore. I'm a licensed mental health counselor.
That's amazing. And why did you decide to do that? What really prompted your decision to go down that route?
So I very into peer support, critical incident stress response, peer support teams, like the whole idea of like providers taking care of providers. I totally bought into, like, hook, line, and sinker. I'm a SISM instructor. I have like 4 or 5 different forms of peer support that I'm formally trained in. I help build peer support teams. And I realized that you can be the best peer supporter in the world, you can be the highest trained peer supporter in the world, but like there's a ceiling where you're still a peer. And the barrier to entry to run peer support teams, the barrier to entry to oversee and help build peer support teams, and to provide more nuanced care, to be able to give more specialized kind of boots on the ground, like psychologic first aid, really comes from obtaining graduate level education in mental health care. And I really enjoy doing the mental health care, seeing individuals, seeing couples, doing that trauma focused work. So what got me there was kind of the glass ceiling of peer support, but I really fell in love with it once I started to do it.
Do you prefer doing the individual, or do you do a lot of couple therapy? And is it first responder specific couple therapy?
That's an awesome question. My other niche, if you will, is in neurodiverse or neuroaffirming care, so ASD, ADHD. And most of my couples are either healthcare providers, someone in the pair, or neurodiverse, either ASD or ADHD. That said, I never thought I was going to be a couples counselor. When I went to school, it's like a mandatory. There are a gajillion like mandatory 3 credit graduate level classes you have to take. I took my couples class. I was like, yeah, whatever. And just like when you're, in EMT or paramedic school, right? When you're out of school or in your internship, you have to do X number of these. And I sat in my mandatory, like this poor couple had to be, provided care by me, kind of against my will. And I absolutely fell in love with it. It is the biggest single surprise of my journey of mental health care, is how much I deeply value working with couples and how impactful that work is. So it's certainly not my one and only. Like, I don't think you're going to see me join like the Gottman Foundation anytime soon, but I really, really enjoy working with couples. I think it's tremendously impactful work, not only as a healthcare provider, but as somebody who specializes in that neuroaffirming and neurodiverse care.
And do you think that you would be doing therapy if you weren't a first responder or healthcare provider?
That's a really good question. I don't think so. I don't know if I would have found the need. I don't know if I would have had my own trials and tribulations with mental health care. And I'm not sitting here saying that like we're the only people that need mental health care, but what brought me to a therapist's office every time was either a critical incident at work or the impact that really unmanaged first responder life had on my relationship. So I certainly don't want to say no, but I really don't think I would have had the experiences in therapy that brought me to really dive into peer support, that brought me to become a therapist.
And did you have a lot of therapy sessions while you were working proactively as an EMT, first responder, flight paramedic, any of that?
Yeah, no, great question. Not enough.
I think that's always the answer.
Yeah, I had mandatory ones that went really poorly. I joke that part of me became a therapist out of spite for a really, really bad therapy interaction after a really tragic event at one of my agencies back home. And, you know, all respect and kindness as a mental health professional now to that mental health professional, they were overextended, overwhelmed, they overpromised, they underdelivered. And I was not the only one affected. I'm not going to sit here and say it was just me, but many of us had really negative experiences from an over-promising mental health professional who said, call me if you need anything, and then we needed something, and they just did not have the tools or the bandwidth to deliver that. I did find a ton of value in finding a good therapist, though. So I think, unfortunately, a bad experience in therapy pushed me away from therapy for a period of time. And if I could do anything different, I wish that someone in my life had said, a bad therapist isn't a reflection of you. Like, a bad experience in therapy isn't a reflection of you. It's a reflection of your cohesiveness with that one singular mental health professional. It's like going to a bad dentist. You still have a cavity. You just didn't get along with that dentist. Don't ignore the cavity for 5 years. go find another dentist. And I was too young and too headstrong and didn't do that. But when I aligned with a therapist that I really enjoyed, that was very late in my career. That was when I became a flight paramedic. So that poor woman and I had a lot to unpack.
That's awesome, dude. Do you feel comfortable sharing maybe one of your worst experiences as a first responder?
Yeah, I do. And I'll tell you that Sam kind of gave me a primer on this. I'll break the fourth wall a little bit. So I want to share one of my worst experiences, and then I want to give all of the listeners tools on how to answer this question in the wild, right? When you're at Cumberland Farms and somebody asks you this question. I think for me, it's more of an amalgamation of the worst things I've seen. I unfortunately have a number of individuals who have attempted to die by suicide by lighting themselves on fire or using some semblance of an accelerant as their mechanism to die by suicide. And the aftermath of that, and the often unsuccessful nature of that, and then the very complex resuscitation that needs to attempt to be done in a human who is in mind-bending pain and in and out of consciousness. I find that that is one of those calls that hits all the pieces, right? The sights, the sounds, the smells. I think any responder hearing me talk about a Brad Byrne can already get smells in their mind, right? Really kind of an amalgamation of those sit on my top as some of the worst things that I've seen. Um, and yeah, those are it, right? I think what I encourage you to do when someone asks you that question, first just pretend you don't hear them and go on about your day. Like no one actually has to answer that question if they don't want to. And then my go-to is I thank them for asking because they never mean anything by like, what's the worst thing you've ever seen? I tell them when I've helped someone the most. I just completely pivot the question. When someone at Dunkin' Donuts is like, what's the worst thing you've ever seen in the helicopter? I'm like, oh man, let me tell you about the time that I saved this kid's life. And he plays lacrosse with his dad now. Like, went from proper dead to playing lacrosse completely unaffected. That's why I love doing this job. I hope you have a great day. And I walk away because I no longer allow other people, especially no disrespect, random people in the world that have no idea what that can do to our psyches. I just don't allow them access to that space. It's the psychological equivalent of someone saying, can I punch you really hard in your genitals? No, you may not. No, you may not. So I'm just not going to let that happen and then move on with my day.
Can I punch you really hard in the genitals is a really good example of how that hurts people.
Right.
And that's crazy. Is that an actual call that you had with the kiddo that was dead and then is now playing lacrosse? That's awesome.
Yeah, no, that is 1,000% a true story. I've continued to keep in touch with these parents after years and years of doing this, so I won't share too much of the story, but I do have some flexibility to share it. A young man drowned in a hotel pool. This was in my flight paramedic time, so I was the second responder, I like to say, right? The first responding bystanders did amazing bystander CPR. The ALS crew did amazing bystander CPR. For my airway aficionados here, it was a classic salad intubation of all the suction, keep the suction canister in while you're doing all of this stuff. And just an incredibly resilient young man who had a amazing turnaround is clinically like a near drowning, right? Because did not die from drowning, but had an amazing recovery and is now living a full, happy, healthy life. And it's awesome. It's absolutely awesome to
It's
be one
crazy.
player in a team of people that have done some work.
Yeah, it's crazy how resilient kids are, especially when it comes to drowning. Like you can have some pretty remarkable turnarounds with that specifically. Not a lot of other things, but with that specifically. Is flight something you had always had interest in?
So I didn't always want to fly. I was certainly never the dude that like watched the helicopter land, but I did want to practice at the absolute pinnacle of my license level, right? In some chunks of New England, you hold a paramedic license. So for those of you that are like certificate, like in some states, you're actually a licensed paramedic up here in New England. But I wanted to like be at the absolute edge of my license level every day. I wanted to provide the best care, the most critical care, and the flight agency that I work with now in Boston is a platform that allows you to do that. I'll say their name because I don't think they'll yell at me, and if they do, we can talk about it in post, I suppose. But I have proudly served for Boston Med Flight for just shy of 12 years. We do ground critical care, rotor critical care for a period of time. We did fixed wing as well. And the flying is amazing. Don't get me wrong. It's really cool to fly. It's really cool to do all the things. But no matter what vehicle you're in, you have an opportunity to provide really life-saving interventions in medications that the places you're going to help simply don't have, and capabilities that they don't have. So it's so cool to be that resuscitationist in that person who's like, oh, I have this medication in my book bag, right? That you don't have in this entire hospital, and we can institute it and do that. So, long-winded way of saying it was infinitely more about the critical care for me than the flying for me. The flying is amazing. I love it. I have a gajillion, beautiful pictures and love the adrenaline rush and everything else. But I chose critical care because of the critical care, not the aviation.
That's awesome. So why did you go with flight versus ground? Was ground critical care not an option out there, or?
So this program is just dual programs. So they offered all of it, and to me that was just the easiest, was to work really hard to be at a place that would let me do both. So I think what is most unique about Boston is they don't have an EOP team, they don't have a high risk OB team, they have a critical care generalist team. So we, as the paramedic and nurse crew, are either with our critical care EMTs on the ground truck or our pilots and PICs in the rotor wing aircraft, and we do all of it. So there's no like, oh, we have this protocol on ground, we have this protocol on rotor. It is just this encyclopedia of protocols that you can use anytime, anywhere. And that to me was the best combination of all the things.
And how long have you been in EMS for?
20 years. Sam and I were just talking about how close to old we are. And I got my paramedic ticket at 19 and was this is a throwback term for people in the New York area, but I was an assistant ambulance technician at 16 years old. So an AAT in the state of New York can hand someone with a certificate a blood pressure cuff and maybe do CPR if there's an adult in the room, right? But it gave me a really, really early view of medicine. My mother was an EMT and a dispatcher, and my father was a paramedic. So I knew of the profession. I thought the profession was very cool, but I was able to actually like be on the ambulance and helping, right? Trying as best I could to like not be in the way at a really young age, which afforded me the opportunity to get my, EMT at 17 and a half and my paramedic at 19. So been doing it now for just over 20 years.
Paramedic at 19 is insane. Do you feel like you were prepared for it at that time?
No,
No.
no, I think, and some of this I think is just how the curriculum is built. What I would say, and I think if you interviewed any of my, partners at 19, they might disagree. I think I was a phenomenal EMT basic that had access to a drug box. And I think that kept a lot of my patients alive until I learned the nuances of advanced life support. But truly, I was a rock solid EMT that could start IVs and put breathing tubes in, right? I think without having the licensure, I think what I was an advanced EMT for a while, masquerading as a paramedic, right? That eventually, like, through time, through reps, through practices in really busy systems, really learned the nuance of good paramedic level care. But having that really like rock solid basic life support foundation is absolutely what helped give me that buffer to learn to be a safe paramedic.
Sure. And I don't want to like call you out or anything, but do you think that like, because we are seeing these numbers younger and younger, right? Because before, I mean, I can't speak for your area, but before you had to be 21 to even drive an ambulance. That's not the case anymore. You can get approval through insurance, the companies can, to start having drivers at 18. Do you think that that's a safe route? That we should be having providers, paramedics specifically, under the age of 20?
No, not at all. And I've said this. I'm lucky enough to work with the National Registry. I've been an SME previously. I hope that this doesn't like remove my ability to be an item writer or an SME ever again. But I'm pretty vocal about this. I think it's amazing to serve your community. I think volunteer services are absolutely amazing. I think like the community and the fraternity of like going to help others is huge. I worry that what we ask paramedics to do before they're even old enough to drink is not only damaging to our prefrontal cortex, like how much trauma can a not yet developed prefrontal cortex actually absorb, and are we ensuring a safe way to do it? So I think the most politically correct response I'll give, other than the emphatic no that I just said 30 seconds ago, is yes, with a lot of psychological safety and a lot of trauma informed practice of we are asking people who are not yet fully, like, biologically neurologically developed. I'm not throwing a shot at anybody, I'm not calling anybody stupid, I'm saying like your brain is literally not done growing and maturing. We're asking you to make incredibly high risk decisions in an incredibly traumatic field and just hoping you're going to be okay, right? And I don't think it's appropriate that the armed forces, allows it at such a young age. I don't think it's appropriate that EMS allows it at such a young age. I think we really need to enforce the trauma focused, trauma aware barriers of how do we do that at that level of risk with this level of psychological safety.
What do you think the go around for that would be?
In the absence of like making it 21 and older.
Yeah.
I think everybody throws around this word trauma informed, and then everybody goes, oh my God, safe space and this and that. And like good trauma informed care is actually not about having a safe space. It's actually about recognizing the role that trauma plays in our lives and reinforcing the innate resilience to power through, right? Good trauma informed people are not like, oh my God, Whoopi, it's okay, right? We say, how can we succeed through this? How can you power through this? And how can you care for yourself while you're doing this? And the acknowledgement that it's not pick up more overtime and stop crying. It's 5 minutes to say that call was really challenging. What can we do to get you whole? And how can we keep you on the ambulance instead of shut up and cry in the bathroom, right? Which is what many of us were given early in our career, right? I don't know if you can see Sam's face, right? But like we've all gotten that advice in our career. What if that advice had changed to those calls are really hard? Let's make sure your fundamentals are in check. Have you eaten anything? Are you hydrated? Do you need a couple minutes to just rest and process? And how can we normalize the really emotional response that we can have while still encouraging forward progress? This is not go sit, go take a nap, don't be in service for the rest of the day. This is, can you take half an hour, 45 minutes to biologically, physically right yourself, get hydrated, have a bite to eat, allow your body a moment to get out of fight or flight, and then assess, where are we? How do we feel? Are you okay? Okay. Are you okay enough to continue on with the shift? Okay. If you're not, you call me and we change that. Instead of shut up, stop crying, go do the next call. Because I know the goal then was to build resilience. I completely appreciate that very few people were like, I want to bruise this person's psyche for a long time. It was the metaphorical equivalent of when a little kid falls down and we're like, oh, you're okay, right? And we just distract them and move on from there. But in reality, what we did is we told them it's never okay to process those feelings. Instead of saying, yeah, I cried like a baby at my first code.
And for somebody who may not be developed mentally for that, right, it can cause a lot of long-term issues, which I think is what we're seeing in a lot of our, maybe not the younger generation now. I think we've picked up on, we've got to really break this cycle and stop doing what we're doing, because people that are our age and around our age are still dealing with a lot of those psychological effects, right? And older than us as well.
Absolutely. I mean, I think the younger, the Gen Zs and younger can actually teach us a thing or two about work-life balance, about psychological safety. I think sometimes the pendulum is swung too far over. Like resilience is somewhere in the middle, right? And I think both ends have to learn a little bit, right? And it's okay to say, like, I don't say this to be disparaging, but like, you don't need a crystal in your hand right now. Take a deep, slow breath. You can do this sans crystal, right? And conversely, to our salty dogs, like, it's actually okay to shed a tear and to take 5 minutes and breathe, right? And can we get both people to the middle? But that can be really hard to say without a ton of space and acceptance. Because if I say that to either person that I've never known before, they're going to tell me to F off, right? But if I say that to someone who knows I care about them, who knows that I'm offering my perspective, not my law, not my, unshakable right answer, my perspective with their best interest in mind, then we can start to work towards the middle ground.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think we can learn from every single person every single day, and we should continue learning, even if it's not book knowledge necessarily. I think we're in the right direction.
Absolutely.
So, what do you do in your off time?
I'm a part-time flight paramedic and a full-time counselor. I don't have a ton of off time right now, which is not ideal. I am a proud dog dad. I have a just shy 1.5-year-old golden retriever asleep at my feet right now. I am happily married. I have a really, really close-knit group of friends. You can always find me out doing something. I really try to move my body as best I can. It's summertime in my neck of the woods, so you find me on a bicycle somewhere, taking the dog for a walk, doing something. I really try to embrace being outside whenever possible. I'm also like 250 and really hairy, so like it's got to be like the right climate for that to happen. But I really do enjoy like spending time with those that help fill my cup and being really intentional about taking the self-care that I encourage those around me to take.
Is that what prompted Stay Fit for Duty?
Stay Fit for Duty was really born off of this idea of, as many of us know, and I don't necessarily agree with, but roll with me for a minute. Like the critical care flight paramedic is the top of the imaginary mountain, right? Like that's like the pinnacle, and it's a big deal. And I agree. I think it's a really big deal. I think it's one chunk of a profession that can go a million different ways, but it's a really big deal. And to Sam's point, when we were talking about kind of my therapeutic journey, I went into flight very therapy avoidant. I was mandated to go to therapy after a very dear friend of mine at an agency died by suicide. And that experience was awful. I learned that therapists weren't safe. I learned that therapists couldn't be trusted. And I learned that, quite frankly, therapists sucked. So I did what every good young EMS professional did, and I shoved every bad call in my retroperitoneal space, and I yelled at my loved ones, and I drank my face off and did all of these things. And then I go through an orientation platform that I can't BS my way out of, right? The medicine is too unfamiliar, the geography is too unfamiliar, and I talk about working a code that just unraveled. The code unraveled, the psychosocial dynamics unraveled. I listened to a wife beg for her husband to stay alive. It's awful, absolutely awful. And I realized that my coping mechanism of drinking an entire bottle of Irish whiskey and passing face down in a blood covered flight suit was not the move. So I wanted to share my story to normalize that story for other people. And Stay Fit for Duty really started with storytelling and advocacy, and it grew to storytelling, advocacy, and change. Like, and here's the course you can take, here's the process you can do, here's the way you can do it. And as I continue to evolve in my professional career, Stay Fit for Duty kind of follows me, right? Like now I can provide therapeutic services. I have a network of culturally informed therapists, right? I have a network of individuals that can help. I can help build your peer support team. So it started as advocacy and really worked its way up to a very multi-collaborative plan.
That's awesome. And do you stay local to your community only, or do you do all over?
I don't. I do all over. I try not to overextend myself, but I've been as far out as Scotland. I talked to Scotland's ambulance service before. I've done some work in Canada. I have helped programs both 911 in HEMS and the Pacific Northwest, the Carolinas. I really work to be as accessible as possible. And my therapeutic work is limited to states that my license allows me to be at. In the pre-licensed scope, you can only go so far, right? And sometimes you can extend to other states, sometimes you can't. But the peer support, the consultancy, the keynote speaking, the advocacy, that is wherever I can go and wherever I can be helpful.
Scotland is crazy. Was that like your first time going, or had you been out there before?
Virtual.
Oh, that's unfortunate.
Still awesome. I mean, I got like even interacting with the team, and we had an hour long kind of keynote, and then I just really, like, pardon my French, but like shot the shit with the guys for a while, and like that alone was really cool. And we shared some swag back and forth, which was really neat. So it is absolutely on my bucket list to go. I've made it to Ireland and been able to explore Ireland for quite a few weeks, so I was able to explore through there, but I haven't been much farther out than that.
That's awesome. That's awesome. We've talked a lot about what you've done and how you've gotten there. What's really been your proudest moment?
That's a really good question. I mean, man, when like you can help one of your brothers or sisters in this job, it's it like makes every sleepless night worth it. Like when a provider reaches out for support, I think it's so multifactorial, right? Like I have providers that reach out for support and they're like, hey, I really need help finding a therapist, and you help them find a therapist, and they call you a month later and they're like, oh my god, like I got a ton of work to do, right? But like I love that person you connected me with, or like our peer support team is thriving, or like you gave me the courage to like call a therapist back, or I would really prefer them to say like you helped me find my own courage to, call a therapist back and do this and that. And like anytime I can offer any support to the people that do this job every single day and the loved ones that support them, because our families are really important pieces of this, it gives me a whole other 10 years to do it, right? It just recharges me for another decade.
What would you say to somebody who's a provider who doesn't have any family or friends, right? Like, what if they're just this lone wolf type of first responder and they're stubborn? Like, how do you promote that mental health and the well-being aspect for them?
The therapist in me would ask them why they're a lone wolf, right? Like what happened, right? And and is that true, right? Like, do you truly not have any friends or family, or are you so reserved and so afraid of being vulnerable that you've iced those people out, right? And I know that that sounds very like person problem focused, and that's not where I'm trying to be, but I would really remind even the lonest of wolves, right, that there are people in the world that you can trust, and look for those people, be stepwise, be cautious, right? I'm not saying like go tell your deepest darkest secrets to the first person that says hello to you, but you can introduce trust and compassion in slow forms. And what would you do for someone who is asking you for help? So because the lone wolf is also going to bend over backwards to help anybody who needs help, and can you allow other people to give you the same help and support that you would give others?
Did you watch the movie Code 3?
I did. I did.
You
Yeah.
did. So when I asked the lone wolf question, that was who I was thinking of. Like the first responder who literally just lives and comes into work, and their best friend is their partner, even though the partner may not reflect that type of friendship or relationship with them.
Yeah. Yeah, and I wonder too, like men like to bust each other's balls, right? Like I'm willing to bet if we drill deeper, they were a little closer than even he wanted to admit, right? But I think what you saw there, I thought the movie as a whole was really, really good. But what you saw there was a slightly more, in my opinion, healthy, like, buddy, you're my coworker. Like, I care about you. And he does, right? And you can see all the ways he like deeply cares about
Yeah.
this person, right? But what he was really saying was like, you might not feel that way at H&R Block, right? Like if you were both tax accountants, you wouldn't be like, I live or die for the human who's in the cubicle next to me. And that talks a little bit about trauma bonding, and it talks a little bit about like all of the different ways that when externally our life gets really hard, we look at what we can control. And paramedics are incredibly fortunate that we have a lot of impact in a lot of different places, and that can often like supersede our we have to control this. I can't, my marriage is a lost cause, right? Just kidding. If my wife is listening to this is an example, right? But like the marriage is a lost cause, so I'm going to double down on work instead of the infinitely harder, how do I make my marriage less of a lost cause? And I don't want to sound self-promoting. I don't want to be like, go to therapy, right? But like that is where mental health professionals can be valuable at either individual or couples level to say, how can we make that happen, right? It's not about going to a mental health professional to get fixed. That's bullshit. It's about going to a mental health professional to say, how can we help you use your tools differently or better, and go from there.
That's awesome, dude. And I really do, like, I don't think you're self promoting. It's one of the things I do tell people often. Like, I, uh, I'm good friends with a gentleman named Rob. He started Skulls for Hope and also works with a program called Next Rung. And literally anytime I have called him and said, hey, look, this guy needs, or this girl, I've done both, needs help. they need mental health help. We need a therapist for these people. Like right now, they can't afford it. Every single time he's turned around and he's like, give me like 20, 30 minutes and we'll get you set up. I was like, you're awesome. He connects with the individual and gets them set up. And if they, choose to continue, that's great. That's on them past that point. But having that ability to be there for the first responders who need it in a way that they do need it and maybe don't realize it is a really, really amazing feeling.
Absolutely. And I think that we often remember, or often should remember, that what that really is peer support, right? It's very nuanced peer support, and it's peer support that moves you to a level. But a colleague of mine in New York, Dr. Drew Anderson, he talks a lot about how, like, as a head of a peer support team, right, he shouldn't be the first person that a responder's talking to, right?
Yeah.
It should be, family, friends, peer, this and that. And I want to do two things, right? I don't ever want to undervalue peer support because it's absolutely invaluable, but I want to caution peers of when they're turning into therapists. And when a peer supporter comes to me as the therapist and is like, oh, I've been working with Sam for months, my eyebrow raises. What do you mean months? Oh, we talk for 2 hours every Tuesday. My guy, you're a therapist, right? Like, that's not what peer support's designed to be. And it's both to, ensure that everyone is operating within their scope of practice, but also reminding the peer supporter that if you find yourself talking to somebody for hours at a clip every single time, that person could likely benefit from an escalation of care. And if you can create a network where you're like, no, I know James, I trust James, like I've worked with James, that can often be a barrier to entry that makes it a little bit easier. And, I really work to, I say exploit, but I say kind of tongue in cheek, like, use your insurance, use your employee assistance programs. I know that some EAPs have very ill-fitting counselors, but what else can you use them for? Can you see, oh, James isn't in network. Okay, call your insurance company and see what your out-of-network benefit is. Talk to Next Run, talk to giveanhour.org, talk to the Overwatch Collective and these places. And those are only to name the ones that I'm either familiar with or work with. Talk to the people that have money literally sitting in a bank waiting to give you $500 to go see a therapist a few times, right? Like that there are ways to approach this, but we need to remember that when we are really stressed, our cognition is in the toilet. So how can we work to bridge that gap and say, hey, I'm going to take the cognitive load of this away from you. You call this number when you're ready, and the rest of it will happen. Next Run, the Overwatch, Give an Hour, right? Like those places that do a lot of that work. Or do you have an embedded counselor within your organization? Even if that person can't be or isn't able to be your counselor, can you give them the cognitive offload of, hey, I need a counselor, right? At agencies I work with, if someone reaches out to a peer and says, I need a counselor, they have a pre-fobbed spreadsheet explainer, the whole deal. Here's culturally informed mental health professionals in your zip code with your insurance. Go, right? And then you go from there. But the work is ensuring that that is, ready to be given to those people, not, oh my God, I should build you a spreadsheet and then blah, 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 blah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do think that that is a huge barrier to care. Also, is maybe insurance, period, but also the understanding of how to utilize those tools, right? Like if you don't use your insurance except for when you show up to an appointment and you're handing a card over, then you might not really understand all the nuances that come with that, right? So like maybe if the insurance is saying no, we can't afford, or we don't want to pay for that, we don't want to cover that, then calling that insurance might actually rectify the issue by figuring out what the block is that's preventing them from covering a certain provider, right? It's oftentimes just a phone call, and maybe being able to do that phone call or having somebody to help you make those phone calls also can be super beneficial.
Absolutely. And I would love to say that your mental health professional can help you with that. Sometimes they can, and sometimes they can't. And sometimes they have 50 clients on their caseload and there's 30 different insurances, right? And they don't know all the nuance there. But part of many employee assistance programs is less find this counselor, get this crisis person in, do whatever, and like help me figure out my insurance. Where is my HR team? That's literally like what human resources is there for, right? Like, explain to me, help me find my out of network insurance benefits. I found this counselor, they're open, they're a good fit, they don't take my insurance. Help me figure out what the cost would be if they do. How can I loop them into Next Run, the Overwatch Collective, this and that? And again, sometimes peer support teams or peer supporters need to be able to sit and answer those questions. It's not always about crisis intervention and, PSISM and CISDs and ASAP and things that are really helpful, but it can often be a lot of those tangible pieces as well.
Yes, yes, I agree 100%. Man, I hate insurance. It's the worst.
It is. It is. I hate it more now that I'm a mental health professional than I ever did, because it breaks my heart when a client reaches out, especially like, we're not getting political today, but in like a really like tough environment, political kind of climate, right? Somebody reaches out and says, "Hey, I have a new job and I have this insurance." And I call their insurance company, and their $20 copay is now $180 a session. And they're like, "Oh, I can't afford that." Right? Who can?
Yeah,
So
who
it's
can?
really, really challenging. Yeah.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. And it's rough, but there are ways to go around it. Just because I said no doesn't mean that it's no in the future. It just might be something that needs to be worked through with the insurance. You can always call the number on the back of the card to see what's going on and talk with, one of the managers that happens to answer to see if that's something that you can move forward with.
Yeah.
So, James, where do you see yourself in the next 5 to 10 years?
I really hope, and I'm really working to ensure that Stay Fit for Duty is synonymous with provider wellness and support. I think we're getting there. I think we're working really hard with a lot, especially in the HEMS and critical care industry, working with a lot of the big players in that space. I'm working with a lot of different platforms to really ensure that the brand is synonymous with that. I'm a trauma focused EMDR and CBT clinician. I am working to collaborate with the space that will allow me to perform EMDR intensives, and that really opens the door to seeing clients for longer periods of time and shorter durations. I'm not talking intensive outpatient. I'm not talking about inpatient, but can a provider come to me for 3 days and we do 4 months worth of work? And how attractive can that be for some of like our Kelly scheduled firefighters, right? Who are like, I have 4 days, right? I can make this work. And can we really continue to work with a lot of strong mental health professionals in the space? Truly, there are too many to name right now. Some that have done the job, some that haven't, and have really committed their life to doing this work well. Can we really work to strengthen and codify this as a branch of the psychotherapeutic community? We have that in military and veterans. Like, that's literally a branch of the American Psychiatric Association. The American Psychological Association recognize that as a sect of therapy. Can we also work to codify that with our emergency response personnel as well?
That's a really good goal. Why EMDR specifically? I've heard you mention it a few times. There are so many different options, right, for healthcare providers, but EMDR seems to be kind of your bread and butter.
It's very in vogue right now. I'll own that for sure. I think if we say EMDR 3 more times with our cell phone near us, right, you're going to find 74 providers that do EMDR. EMDR is in its psychological infancy, and it is a mode of reprocessing traumatic events in a way that allow your functioning to be inhibited as little as possible. I know it's a negative and a negative and a negative. It doesn't magically erase the terrible memory. You're not gonna forget that you took care of a dude whose arm was sloughed off as you were trying to start an IV, but it is gonna make the smell of burning flesh less, sympathetic nervous system inducing, right? It does help work to take negative cognitions, I could have done more, it was my fault, and move them to, I did everything I could, I worked really hard. And the EMDR intensives, which are these longer periods of EMDR therapy, really allow this nuanced trauma therapy to work. You can imagine if you have 52 to 55 minutes to do this therapy, there's 5 minutes of hello, how are you? There's 8 minutes of getting someone set up and situated. And then there's 30 minutes maybe of this intervention. And then there is time to spool down and get someone situated and squared away. So it really creates these smaller blocks of time. So really it's a modality that takes a lot of other modalities and loops it into itself. There are pieces of cognitive behavioral therapy in it. There are pieces of parts work where we look at our psyche as different parts. There's a protector, there's a helper, there's a this, there's a that, which some of you may recognize as a more advanced form of internal family systems, which is a different way to, I don't want to diminish IFS at all, but another way to package this idea of parts work. So it really is a collaborative trauma focused platform that in one aspect of it uses eye movements to help desensitize and reprocess a traumatic event. So I find it to be a really good catch-all for a lot of really trauma focused psychological complaints.
Have heard good things about it, and I've heard that it doesn't work for some people. So, I mean, you never know until you try, right? And just doing it once usually isn't a good enough amount of time. You do need to practice it a few times with a therapist to really make sure and see if whether it works for you or not. And I think that any option at this point is a good option. So I do commend you for doing that and for being where you are today. It's actually very impressive how far along you've come in throughout your career.
Thank you. Thank you. And the one piece, Sam, I'll add to what you said is like fit with your mental health professional matters more than almost anything. Like if you have a mental health professional that you trust, that you can swear in front of, that can swear in front of you, right? That you truly feel heard, seen, and validated, that matters so much more than the modality that they do. And especially with EMDR, because it is so in vogue right now and it is seen as a separate intervention, it's not uncommon for someone to come to me for just the EMDR. And they're like, okay, I'm ready. Like, where's the light that I'm supposed to look back and forth at? And one, that's not how you do EMDR. And two, like that alliance matters a lot. And I remind people that you could go to the best EMDR therapist in the world who you didn't feel seen, heard, or valued by, and that will impact the EMDR. Conversely, you can go to a terrible EMDR. Who knows? Maybe I'm an awful EMDR therapist, but the people that I work with feel seen, heard, and validated. You're going to have a better experience with that person. So I really shy away when someone calls me and says, "Oh, I found this EMDR therapist. They'll see me tomorrow, and we're going to start reprocessing in 15 minutes." Oh my God, no, right? And I think some of that is like language difficulty, and like I don't think the mental health professional would have used the same terms, but it is hard to say like I want you to find someone and I want you to get the care you deserve, but therapy also requires a little bit of kick in the tires and a little bit of are we the right fit? And I think especially in a field where we show up, we kick the door in, we put the IV in, we intubate the person, we give the drug and we leave, it can be hard for us to not say like do the thing, when in reality what we need to say is like let's make sure that this is the person I'm going to do the thing with.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And James, I want to give you the opportunity for the next 15 minutes or so to really talk about anything that you want to talk about. What do you want to bring to the table? And then how can we find you?
Awesome. I appreciate that. I think we covered a lot of the things. What I want to bring to the table is it's okay to not be okay. I know eye rolls, everybody, right? I also want to reinforce that it's okay to be okay. And I really want to champion those people that are okay. I just want them to look in the mirror and make sure they are, make sure that it's not just a coping mechanism that's run haywire. And if you are okay, check in on the people that aren't. We don't have to make this a are you, aren't you? It's the classic like I'm not looking in your cup to see if you have more than me. I'm looking to make sure you have enough. And if I'm okay and I'm doing the thing, I'm going to make sure that someone who isn't or who says they need support has it. But I don't want either camp to exist in isolation, right? I feel like some people say, well, it's okay to not be okay, and they use that as a crutch to not do any work on themselves. They use that as a crutch to not work to be okay, right? They want to live with this kind of safe space of, well, this guy on Instagram says it's okay to not be okay. Well, it is, but we're also working to build and foster and grow that resilience, right? So can we continue forward progress? And can those that are okay not look down their nose at us, right? Like, well, I'm okay. Okay, well, you might not be. So can we make these both work? Can we remember that this is collaborative, right? I don't care if you're a psychologist, a psych mental health NP, a counselor, a social worker. Man, if you thought paramedics and nurses have beef, like you haven't met counselors and social workers, man, they are either thick as thieves or they are in a perpetual pissing match. And I just think it's wasted energy in this space. We all have a lot of work to do, and we all need to help people and social workers and either LPCs, LMHCs, what have you. Like, we all come with different skills, and we just need to optimize working together rather than these metaphorical sword fights that truly like caught me by surprise when I started in the mental health space. We all play a role, and we just need to work to normalize therapy. We need to normalize not needing therapy. We need to normalize short-term support. Maybe Sam just needs to see me for a couple sessions, right? Maybe Sam just needs to like pop in, right? And some of my colleagues call it like a lube oil filter, right? Like they just need to come in for a checkup. Nothing's wrong. There's no problem. They're just coming in to make sure everything's, on the up and up, keeping in touch with their therapist, and then going on about their day. And we need to reinforce that no one can care in the immediacy for a first responder better than a fellow first responder or a culturally informed MHP. So we need to open that door in the interim. And truly, you asked where I hope to see myself in 10 years. I hope to not be needed in 10 years. I hope that no one is going to hire a keynote to talk about mental health because it'll be capnometry, right? I mean, Sam and I are old enough in this profession where like putting someone on waveform capnometry was new and exciting and went to courses about riding the wave, right? And like all this stuff. And now if I tried to give a keynote on end tidal, they'd be like, why? Everyone has it. Everyone uses it. We all know how it works. I truly hope that that's where mental health goes. Hey, I give keynotes on mental health. We have an in-house psychologist. We have this. We have that. Like that is as embedded in our day-to-day as putting end tidal on a patient. And that is what I hope to see in 10 years. How you can find me, if I didn't just talk myself out of a job, is you can find me on Instagram. My handle is stay_fit4duty. You can find me at stayfit4duty.org or .com. Or yeah, those are really the big ones. You can also find me on Facebook and Threads, but I'm much more active on Instagram. So Instagram at stayfit4duty.
Awesome. Well, James, it has been a phenomenal conversation. I've had a great time getting to know you and getting to hang out for the last hour and a half-ish. So I really appreciate you coming on to the 911 Nonsense podcast today. And you've offered a lot of very insightful conversation that I think would be great for the community that listens.
Thank you very much for the platform that you offer, for your patience. Sam won't tell you that we've been trying at this for a while, and we finally connected, made time zones work and everything. So thank you very much for your patience and for your platform, and I hope that everyone has a wonderful day.
Yeah, no problem, man. And I hope you have a wonderful day and a good rest of your week.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for tuning in. If you're enjoying the show and want to show your support, be sure to check out the Noon merch store on Bonfire. Find the link in the description below. Also, if you have any guest suggestions or if you're interested in being a guest on Noon yourself, visit the website at www.samspursuit.com to get in touch.